Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the ISNA-CISNA Education Forum. We have some amazing speakers today. We welcome you again, whether you're in California or New York or anywhere in the country. And I'm sure we have some guests coming in from Canada. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, As-salatu was-salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Sister Fawzia Tung, who earned her MBBS from the University of Jordan, as well as an advanced diploma in education from the University of London. After retiring from psychiatry and journalism, she founded the Chinese Community School in Jeddah, homeschooled her 7 children, served as principal of the Arizona Cultural Academy, and taught anatomy and physiology at the community college before founding and running a K-8 charter school, Aim High Institute, and a private pre-K through 12 school, PAX Academy. Dr. Tung is presently an educational consultant, serves on the board of Consultants for Islamic Schools of Excellence, and is the secretary of the board of the Islamic Schools League of America. Welcome, Sister Fawzia, and a very dear friend. Oh, it's nice to see you again. And the title of her presentation today is Social Emotional Learning in Islamic Studies.
Thank you so much, Sister Layla. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and thank you for being here today on a beautiful Sunday morning. This is a 50-minute talk, so I'm going to try my best to finish in 40 minutes, give you time for questions and answers. So by the time we reach about 10:40, start typing your questions. If I don't see questions, I'll just keep on, okay? I'll keep rambling on. Okay.
If I may remind everyone, sorry, Sister Fawzia, Brother Fawad is co-moderating and will be watching the chat for questions. So feel free to put questions in the chat throughout.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen, which is here. Okay. Okay. Social emotional learning in Islamic studies. Now, why this topic? Well, let's see. I'm going to watch the chat right now, and I'm going to ask you guys to do a chat storm by answering the following question. How many of you is an Islamic studies teacher here? So just put in the chat. Me. So I can see how many. Yes. Oh, raising hands, fine. Yeah, I was thinking of typing in the chat, so I can see yes. Okay, so we have a few of you. Yes, more. Okay. How many of you is an imam? Because I know that very often Islamic studies teacher becomes or is already an imam. So how many of you is an imam here? Not many. How many of you is a principal or administrator? I don't see many. Okay. Oh, yes, at least one. And how many of you is a parent? Well, yes, I did expect to see many, many more right here. All right. So thank you. So the thing is here, this is a very important topic, not just for the Islamic studies teacher, but for the parent, because you are supposed to be teaching Islamic studies to your children anyway, and for the principal administrator, because you are the one who's going to implement the SEL program in your school. So, and it's only fair to, Sister Lat has already introduced me, but to tell you why I am particularly interested in this topic. I'm a retired psychiatrist, and so for a long time, I've been looking at people's state of minds, especially when I started raising my 7 children, and now looking at my children raise my 7 grandchildren so far. And having worked in schools, I noticed something very, very big, and I'll tell you what it is. Now, why do you think? You must know whether you're an Islamic studies teacher or when you say an imam, I don't mean only imam as a job, but being an Islamic studies teacher, you often have to lead people in prayer, or people come to you for advice. Somehow it comes with a job. I don't know why, but it comes with a job that people come to you for advice. And if you are like me, most of the questions you get are about marital problems, leading often to divorce. What do you think is the most common cause of divorce? Feel free to please go on, write on the chat what you think it is, okay? And, okay, in order to save time, yeah, lack of communication, thank you very much. People keep thinking, people who are outside this whole sphere think, oh, it's adultery. No, it's not. I thought it's actually one of the least common causes, and sometimes a result of the lack of communication. So most of the time, one of the biggest problems in the community is losing your marriage, right? Lack of tolerance, very good. Being stubborn, exactly. Why do people keep losing jobs? Why do people keep losing friends? We are back to the same thing again and again. We can keep calling these lack of good interpersonal relationship skills, right? So if you don't have good skills, you often have this problem. Now, some of us maybe say, well, I'm not going to work. I'm going to stay at home, right? But most of us do have to work, especially if you're male. And losing a job is a big problem. But most of us probably will get married, and losing your marriage is a big, very big problem. We don't want to go into this right now, but it affects your children, your grandchildren. It takes 3 generations to erase the effects, physical and mental, of a divorce. So this is a very big problem. Now, since interpersonal skills are so important, because is everybody born with it? Obviously not. So who teaches it? Big question. Who? Is there a course out there called interpersonal skills course in every school that everybody should take? No, we have courses for everything under the sun, for even gemology, how to be an expert in gems or antiques. You have just about every course, skydiving courses, whatever. But you don't have a course for the most important thing you have in the world called interpersonal skills. Back then. Now it's called SEL, right? Okay. At home, who is going to teach your child to say salam? You're going to say mother, father, parents, right? Okay. Who's going to teach your child to say thank you? Right. It is one of the most basic interpersonal skills. And who's going to teach your child not to fight? Start with siblings. How many of you have siblings who, not your siblings, I mean your children's siblings, who fight with each other all the time, or fighting with their friends, or fighting with their neighbors, or fighting with anyone? How about this? Who is going to teach your child to clean up? Who is going to teach your child to give charity? Now, who's going to teach your child to be kind? You're going to say you, the parent, right? Yeah, that's what we all think. Yeah, the parent's going to teach all this. Really? Is it really happening today that all parents are teaching their children all these skills? How many do you have who have a child or a student who is very negative, who likes to fight? How many parents are so busy they don't have time to do this? Well, I'm afraid it's most of us, okay? Now, we keep thinking the family should teach this, but is it their job to do that? Yes, basically, if Allah gave you, subhanahu wa ta'ala, gave you this child, it's your job to teach your child. But today, we have delegated this to schools. Most of the academics we delegate to school. Now, Quran, Islamic studies, everything delegated to schools. So somehow, automatically, we assume things that we were supposed to do is now the school's job, okay? I want you to think back as a parent, since most of you are parents. When was the last time your whole family sat down and talked about kindness? Or went out and said, let's practice kindness now? I'm afraid most of us are way too busy with, I think that the pandemic has done one good thing, that they made us all reflect back, and we have time now at home as a family. Many families have rediscovered the joys of being a family because of the pandemic. But before the pandemic, we were also busy most of the time that we don't have time to think about, well, what am I doing about teaching my children, right? these things that I'm supposed to be teaching them. So let's face it, is it a teacher's job? We should say it is not. But look at what the teacher has to do. Other than dealing with very negative children, a teacher, I don't need to tell you, you're juggling so many things. You're not just standing in classroom teaching. No, you have to lesson plans, corrections, you name it. You're dealing with so many things. You're thinking, what on top of whatever I'm teaching, whether it's math, Islamic studies, whatever it is, you want me to teach akhlaq now to these kids as well? Well, thank God that in Islamic studies, we are supposed to teach that already. So let's talk about emotional quotient. Many of you might already know, back in '95, this book got published and made a huge bang. Daniel Goldman, he talked about something called emotional intelligence. And he came up with the term emotional quotient, EQ. And he stated in his book that EQ is way more important than IQ in order to succeed in life. Okay, and you can read the book to find out what he bases all this on. In summary, in school, students with high EQ are so-called good students. Low EQ, not so good students. At work, those with high EQ are good workers, and those who don't, not good workers. As a whole, good citizens have high EQ. I don't want to mention politics, but we can see right in front of our eyes right now how low EQ led to being bad citizens. Okay. Okay, let's keep out of that topic. All right. So in schools, more in details, you would have an increase in drug use, increase in violence, increase in bullying, increase in dropping out, and most importantly, which I forgot to put here, decrease in academics achievement. So this is why schools suddenly got interested, because they say, oh, goodness me, if we don't teach them EQ, now they are going to get bad grades in academics, and that's going to affect my school, right? So this is why all of a sudden they got interested in this. If the child grows up and still didn't learn much EQ, they will have negative emotions a lot of time, negative perceptions of what's going on, developing behavioral issues, poor communication, like somebody mentioned now, and reduced proactivity. So they are not proactive in dealing with their problems, lower performance in their jobs, weak confidence or self-confidence, damaged credibility, and higher losses, as we're seeing today. So therefore, because of all this, suddenly it has become the school's job to teach social emotional learning. Now, you're going to say, well, I'm teaching Islamic studies. What does it have to do with me? Yes, very good question. Now, by the way, we need to talk about character education as well. So if you have taught more than 10, 15 years, you know that before SEL became a buzzword, the new kid on the block was called character education. And all kinds of programs popped up talking about character education, you know. There are many different programs that you could implement. Some of them were very simple, like, oh, every month we're going to have one topic like honesty. And then you try to do activities based around honesty and so on and so forth. So SEL, how different is it from character education? Well, they have the same goal, which is really to improve the emotional quotient of the student who will grow up into an adult with high EQ. So character education is really the first step, okay? The first step, when schools decided we're going to do something about this. So the first step is to promote something called character education. And many schools tried to do something about it with different, as you can imagine, different rates of success. SEL actually came as a new development based on character education. What they have that's different is that it is a process. So basically, we're going to teach you character education, but we're going to divide this into a process. And there are certain steps, which is developmental. So the 5 steps actually lock together, and each step is depending on the previous step, okay? So in other words, here is a way to do it, okay? Let's compare them a little bit. So in character education, they promote moral sensitivity, moral commitment, ethical reasoning, personal growth. But they take these, and in SEL, what they do is they divide this into 5 areas, 5 skills: self-awareness, self-management. So self-awareness, we're going to go more in detail into each of these. Okay, self-management, social awareness, social skills, and social decision-making and problem-solving skills. Okay. So the main organization that came up with this and promotes it is called CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And here is there's something, casel.org, and go there, and they have all kinds of resources there that you can tap on. So this is their, when it first came out, it was much simpler, but now it has grown a bit more. So this diagram. So social emotional learning is based on, and you look at the orange first, self-awareness and self-management, and go down to the green. Social awareness, relationship skills, and crowning the whole thing is the yellow one, responsible decision making. It can be learned and implemented in the classrooms. I hope you can see my little cursor going around like that. And then throughout the whole school, and eventually into homes and communities. Okay. Now, in my opinion, in Islamic schools, look at this. I changed one thing about it. I changed it in a circle. So the circle in the middle, instead of just calling it social emotional learning, I'm calling it awareness of God. So before you start with self-awareness, even, you need to be aware of God first, because we cannot keep God outside the equation, since he's the source of everything, right? So if a child is aware of God, that he was created by God, that he has certain duties performed in this world, then he understands better why he has to do all this. So look at self-awareness now. If you look at self-awareness, you understand that, let me give you an example. So there are tons and tons of teaching material out there. In lower grades, I would say from pre-K all the way up to maybe 3rd grade, there's an excellent set of books called Teach Me, Be Good, Help Me Be Good. Yeah, Help Me Be Good. And it's actually developed by Joy Berry, a psychologist, actually. And it's really, really good. They are even color-coded. Every book is about one trait. And so some of them are, for example, of self-awareness. You're in school, somebody else came with a cute little, and of course, many of you have faced such thing, cute new little pen or eraser or something, a Hello Kitty one, and you look at it and you're feeling upset. So as a small child, you don't know what that upset is called. You just know you're upset. So you teach them, that's called jealousy. So you teach them to identify emotions. And for example, you're like this is called proud. You're being proud right now because you're having it and everybody else doesn't have it. And then you like that Hello Kitty eraser, but you don't have it. So that's called jealousy. Okay, so self-awareness is understanding and identifying emotions. Many children don't know what these emotions are. They just know they have to deal with something that's really bothering them, right? And they have no words for it. Self-management. So once you're aware of this, what do you do about it? And that's what I like that little series for. That series, they actually start by making you look at certain things that happen, and then they make you, they teach you the word for it, and then they tell you how do you manage it. You could do this, but you could do that. This causes you to lose friends. That causes you to gain friends. So which one would you choose to do? You know, and so on and so forth. And it's very nice. It has a big picture on one side, and so on. Anyway. So self-management is this next step. The step after that is actually, you don't go around, you go back here to social awareness. So once you, based on the knowledge of God and what God wants you to do, identify your emotions, identify yourself, know what kind of person, like in 6th, 7th grade, sometimes up to 8th grade, I like to give them a lot of personality tests, IQ tests, and so on and so forth. Let them understand who they are. Kids at that age are struggling to identify themselves and say, who am I? Who am I really, right? So they love doing those things. And your and then self-management. How do I manage all of this, right? So in social awareness means that once you've managed yourself, you go to the next level, which is interaction with other people. And I find that our children are so unaware of how to interact because nobody taught them. who taught them the law of the jungle? They go to school, whoever's the bully, everybody follows. All right, that's what you've got to do. And if you don't feel it's right, you are alone, but nobody's telling you that there's another way, right? So social awareness, you're aware of society. So I would say the first thing would be parents as a really, really young baby. And then you move on to have parents, siblings, extended family. Then you go on to neighbors, classmates, teachers, and so on and so forth. So because the interaction between a child and a parent is not the same as a child and a sibling. Older sibling, younger sibling. It's not the same as a child and a teacher. Very, very often you'll see that the child starts respecting the teacher the way they respect their parents, or more. Or vice versa sometimes. So, and then they don't know how to interact with children. I'll give you an example. So once I was teaching a 4th grade class, and I was saying, okay, today we're going to talk about friendship. So I divided in teams. Choose your own teammate, teams of 2. Here's a big piece of paper. I want you both, and using these markers, to decorate it with what you think represents friendship. Okay, so 2 little girls whom everybody knew were best friends. They go, and they say, oh, yeah, who wants to present now? They present first, right? So they show their big poster board and say, it is full of flowers, butterflies, hearts all over the place, words like love, friendship, support, blah, blah. And then they say, a friend is a person who will be with you and support you whether you are right or whether you are wrong. I stopped the whole class right there. We started discussing, if you support somebody when they're wrong, are you their friend or their enemy? And then we start talking about the whole thing. So they have to be aware of what is a friend, what is a parent. For example, if your mom is your mother, does that automatically make her your slave? Which is what many children don't think about it, but that's what they're doing. Where's my breakfast? As if mom is the slave and has the duty of providing breakfast on time, right? So they have to be aware of every single relationship, what is the rights and duties. And subhanAllah, we all know that in Islam, we have this all spelled out for us. We don't need to go and search for it, in using research studies or something like that. No, it's there already. So relationship skills are pretty easy for us to teach because we have it already out there. But are we teaching it? And when I say teach it, I don't mean stand there and talk. I mean implementing it. For example, one of the things I did was, and I got this idea from the 100, you get ideas from things and then you develop into your own, right? So I have this box, 1 page with 100 boxes, 10 by 10, it's very easy to print out. And then a letter to the parents. So all of them take this home to the parents. I said, this month, there will be no final monthly exam or final exam, whatever you use in your school. You need to fill up these 100 boxes with signatures from your mom or dad. And in your letter to the parents, you list out how to fill it. And you tell them, please cooperate with me. Okay? Do not just sign so they will get 100. Okay? Cooperate with me. And you tell them, every time they say thank you for breakfast, for serving them breakfast, or if they themselves say, Mom, don't do it, I will do this, I will do that, you can give them a signature. Every time they blah, 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 and you list examples of what you are looking for, right? And say, please, you need to cooperate with me because we are trying to teach the child akhlaq. In practice, in real. It's not just we talk about it. What does it mean? This is the hadith and this. No, go home and practice it. And you tell the parents, we need to cooperate on this, okay? Because they need to learn it. And other than practice, they are not going to learn it. And finally, when they know self and relationship skills, then only can they make a responsible decision. So I sort of combed around the internet to look for a list of characteristics or traits that we would like to teach in akhlaq and adab. So here are some of them that you all know: benevolence towards parents, hospitality to guests, and I compiled some of them together, controlling the tongue, decent speech, trustworthiness, and by the way, decent speech. I mean, how many kids we know who call other people nicknames and so on, right? Giving thanks to Allah, controlling anger, avoiding cheating and deceit, repentance, be useful to others, so say modesty, humility, sincere, etc. You can read it by yourself. Fulfilling promises, tolerance, Oh, taking care of physical and mental health. That is very important too. All right, so here are the list of things you want to teach them. Then what? So if we look at SEL, so this is a little exercise I did, and you can do it yourself. So I list on the left, and there's more slides after this, those 5 stages of SEL training. And then I list on the right, I took all those things that I want to teach the students and list them down out on the right and say, okay, which matches which? So in my opinion, awareness of God is a prerequisite. So, there you go. But what does awareness of God mean, and what does it have to do with later on self-awareness and everything else? So I remember actually the first time I came across the word shirk was actually when I was young, and my little sister went to a school that where they had Islamic studies, and she came home and I was looking at her handouts and say, what is this? What is this? And what is shirk? I started reading it and I got totally engrossed by it. So unless you realize that oneness, Tawheed, is part of your belief, and you have to be specific about it. And we'll go later on what works. What are the things you have to do to make this training work? One is to be specific and explicit. You tell them, this is what I want you to know. Okay. So I don't need to tell you how to teach these things. You already know. Self-awareness. So self-awareness means to accurately recognize one's emotions and thoughts and their influence on behavior. All right. So we talk in akhlaq about sincerity, not just to others, but to yourself also. So not lie to yourself. If you did something, don't lie. Say, oh, well, it was because, no, think deeply. I was jealous. That's why I grabbed her eraser. Okay. I was jealous. Was that a good, so be sincere to yourself. Recognize exactly what you are feeling. Okay. So then I can go through I took these particular traits and I put them here, which are part of self-awareness. There are, of course, tons of others you can use, but like I'm saying, you have 12 grades to teach this. Oh, if you include kindergarten, you have 13 grades to teach this. In these 13 grades, you need to teach all of these. So yes, you can pile on, if you're the administrator of the school, you can pile on, or the head of Islamic studies department or something, pile on all these akhlaq and divide them up and say, okay, in this grade, we should do this. And some of them you have to repeat. First of all, you know that not every single student comes from at kindergarten and finishes 12th grade in your school. They come and go. Many of them come and go, right? So you need to repeat them now and then, sometimes every single year, okay? Sometimes every single year. How much you repeat, different grades have different levels of implementation, how you do this, and so on and so forth. So, and then, like I said, there are a lot of non-Islamic, of course, teaching material out there that you can use, okay? Then self-management. If you look at what self-management means, it means to regulate effectively in different situations, one's emotions, thoughts, behavior, to manage stress, to control your impulses, to motivate yourself. That's a big one, right? Think about nowadays, look at the classroom. How many kids sit there and, okay, they're not motivated to learn. They're not here to learn. They're here to pass the time. And like, how long is it going to take before I can talk to my friend? You may not believe this, but many students think that going to school, the purpose of going to school is to socialize with their friends. It's not to learn. So motivating oneself, setting and working towards achieving personal academic goals. So this is, for the student, that is a very important part of self-management. And I looked at the list I had, and I put these there, which I think have to do with self-management. Truthfulness, again, sincerity, right? Repentance, and like, did your dog really eat your homework? Really? You don't even have a dog, right? No, I do. Okay, be truthful, okay? Be truthful. Repentance, anger management, that's a big one in our community. It's a very big one. And how should I put this? Because you are parents too. Very often, the child, it's not just hereditary, it's also the environment. If anger is something accepted in their family environment, then they will accept that it's okay for me to be angry and to burst out, right? Self-control, forgiveness, kindness, leniency, to pursue knowledge, whether religious or secular. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Am I running? Okay, I better hurry up. Social awareness, it means to take the perspective of, empathize with others. Okay, you can read this. So I put these particular ones in this category, controlling the tongue, right? Controlling the tongue. And next, relationship skills. Here are what they tell us to teach and how to do this. And here are the akhlaq that you can see how many there are. And we have plenty of stuff that are related to exactly what SEL is telling us to teach. Responsible decision making, okay? And here are what you're welcome to, I guess this will be made available after this PowerPoint, so you can just look at them and you can develop your own and make it bigger and fuller as well. I couldn't make too much because it needed to fit into the slide, okay? All right, next point, which is maybe very, very, very important. Before you teach something, you need to know about it. So before teaching math, you need to know math, right? Yes, but before you teach SEL, shouldn't you yourself know about SEL? So you're a role model. I mean, one of the story of, this is back before you had cell phones. So if somebody calls you, don't want to talk to them, and your child takes up the phone, Dad, so-and-so is on the phone, you say, tell them I'm not here. After you taught them never to lie, right? So what are you really telling your child? I'm telling you one thing, but I do something else. So the child says, all right, you're teaching me one thing, goes in one ear, goes the other ear, because what I do is nothing to do with what you tell me, right? So if the teacher teaches something, you better be the role model. Okay, you better do these things. So there are lots of evaluation. We're going to give you a list of them. You can, and I'll put it in the chat as well, probably. Okay. And another way, other than just taking an EQ test, is I don't know if any of you have ever tried this. You can tell your students, today I'm going to videotape myself. You put your camera or your phone there. Don't videotape them. And tell them it's just for myself, not showing this to anyone. It's for me to learn about how I behave in class. Okay, so tape yourself and then go home and watch. And is that what you remember doing? And that is really interesting because sometimes you think you are such a great teacher and go home, oh my God, how did I say that? How could I possibly do this? You know, things like that. And if necessary, if you think that I really have a very low EQ, maybe you can sign up for some training. So here are a number of EQ tests that, there are plenty of them. Oops, okay. Okay, I'm going backwards now. Well, I was going to put in the chat, but never mind. You can find them yourselves later on by going back to this. So there are many EQ tests online, and everyone is the same or some are quite different. One of them is very interesting. They're looking at people's faces and being able to tell what kind of emotion that person feels right now, which is for empathy. Some others like, asking you questions to feel your own EQ and find out whether you have a high or low EQ. If you have a high EQ, good for you, congratulations. If you have a low EQ, the first step is self-awareness. Try to figure out, okay, which part, and they would break it down, say which part you're low on, and try working on it, okay? Okay, this is stuck now. Here are 5 so-called signs of low EQ. Being argumentative. Always must be right. Number B, not listening, which also is the same as oblivious to other people's feelings. Behave insensitively. C, blaming others for your problems. D, emotional outbursts, inability to cope with emotionally charged situations, struggle with relationships. And E, turn conversations always toward yourself. Everything is about me, right? All right, so I then divided. So I did something interesting. I asked my students, you can try this exercise any day. It's really interesting. So I asked my students, can you tell me what is your biggest complaints about a teacher? Now, then none of them said he doesn't know math or he doesn't know English or he doesn't know whatever. Nobody had a problem with what a teacher really is supposed to be doing, right? And nobody said he's always late to class. Nobody said any of this, which is what principals look at, right? Okay, are you qualified to teach math? I'm going to put you in math, right? Be sure you come on time. Be sure you do this. Be sure you hand in your grades on time. This is what we are worried about. But what are the students worried about? So what I did is I took all the top 10 complaints. There are more. And I put A, B, C, D, or E next to them. Okay, so remember, A is you're always right. B is not listening. C is blaming others. D is being emotional. And E, turning conversation. So look at this now. This is not in order of any order, but the top complaints. He or she will not listen to my explanation, whether it was why I was late, why my homework was late, or whatever. They just won't listen. And another one, he hates me, she hates me, whatever. He doesn't like me. He doesn't understand why this is difficult for me. Why, like, okay, they know Arabic, I don't know Arabic. So this is harder for me to memorize than for them, you know, but they won't accept that, okay? Or something like that. Teacher only cares about so-and-so in class. Oh, I've heard that a lot, especially Quran teachers. Because so-and-so somehow find it easy to memorize stuff. So-and-so always memorizes quickly and well. Teacher only likes so-and-so. I mean, true. I've been a teacher, and I can tell you, if someone does well in class, you always love that kid because that kid reinforces your worth as a teacher. That's why you like that kid. But are you here only for that kid? Right? If the other kids cannot learn, why? It's your job as a teacher to find out why and figure it out and make him learn anyway. Teacher cries in class. Okay, that's a rare one, but I know who that was. Some teachers sit in class and, why are you doing this to me? It starts crying. This is more female, but male would be like throwing things around the class, blah, 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 even hitting students sometimes with it. All right, never mind. Teacher didn't teach it, but then says he or she did. So this is like, I'm always right kind of thing, right? Oh, I'm sorry. So I forgot that I did this. Yeah. So the first one is a B. Second one is a B. D, B again. B and D both. This is D, totally emotional outburst. A or C, you know, I'm always right and not acknowledging wrongs. Teacher marked me wrong, but refuses to change it. Interesting, right? Because the teacher is always right. Oh, I answered this correctly. Check. And she checked. Yes, you answered correct. And I put it wrong. Too bad. I already entered all marks. Too bad. Next time, do better. Why would you refuse to? Because grades are a big deal for our students, right? So why wouldn't you change it? It's such a big deal for them. They work for the grades, not for knowledge, by the way. Unfortunately. Teacher blames us for not checking our homework online, but she never told us that she put the homework online. And it was like, why didn't you check? Your fault. Don't ask me. Teacher keeps bragging on himself, herself. That's the E. Like, and another one was teacher always keeps telling her life story, how she fell in love and married her husband, blah, 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 blah. Teacher often shows us an inability to control outbursts, right? Now, that was very important so that you understand. And if you could identify any of these with yourself, you need to go back and take that EQ test. So in other words, how qualified are you to teach and implement SEL if you yourself are not there yet? Okay, so I would urge all of you to take an EQ test, look at yourself sincerely. If we believe in God and we are sincere, we have to do this sincerely and see if we ourselves need some training before we start putting this on our students and expecting them to learn. All right, so the best way to implement SEL is not just in your little classroom, it's at the school level. The admin usually will form an SEL committee. They will design. I like designing best because every school is different. Okay, you all have different issues. I'll adopt a program out there, which are many online. You can just look for one. Then trains the staff, and that includes, like I said, it starts with yourself. You do EQ testing. You find out whether you need some training. You improve yourself as an emotionally stable person. Then you can be a teacher. Okay. Then you need to evaluate. So when you do your program, let's say every semester, or let's say every year, we need to reevaluate the program, whether it's working or not. You have to put down your parameters and what you're going to score and not score, who's going to take care of following up and so on. And after every milestone and every time that shows that there's an improvement, celebrate. If you don't celebrate, don't feel good about this, and you don't have the motivation to go on with it. Okay. So, yeah, many of you already know the SMART goal formula, which means that in order for your program to work and be well evaluated, you need to be specific. So let's say, okay, this year we're going to focus on, or this semester we're going to focus on, and you start with a specific goal, right? And it has to be measurable. And I know SEL is very difficult to measure. So there's a very easy way. You can do a survey, and I've done this before with students, and you say, how many times have you smiled yesterday? Now, of course, maybe yesterday something bad happened at home and they didn't smile, and it had nothing to do with the school, whatever. But that's a simple way to measure, you know, because if you smile, you say all day long, you know, so you have like never and too many to count, and then you have a few numbers in between. And another thing could be, so something measurable, you know, how many friends do you think you have? Something like that. 0, too many, and then 1, 5, 10, something like that. So roundabout. Something that you can measure A, B, C, D, E, and so you can have ups and downs. Or how many teachers do you love in this school? Okay, so if they only love one teacher in the beginning, and after 1 year they love all the teachers, then there you have, you know, so you have a measurable goal, achievable. So don't put a goal like all students will, don't put an impossible goal because you're not going to achieve it. Put it a small increment, something that is possible. Relevant, it has something to do with your school, right? Something that does happen in your school. Let's say you heard that there's a lot of bullying going on. So maybe you should put something to do with bullying in your program, right? So because it's very relevant. Time bound, again, like we said, okay, at the end of quarter 1 or at the end of semester 1, we are going to reevaluate the program and so on and so forth. All right. What are the characters of a successful SEL program? So they have an acronym, SAFE. The activities have to be sequenced. Okay, so like we said, you start with God awareness, self-awareness, and then move on like that. You don't start with make responsible decision. Okay, that's one mistake I did many years ago. Here I go with stories again, but it's very relevant here. After I quit as a psychiatrist, I had many people come to me for advice. And like I said, most of them were marital problems. And after advising lots of people, I found that not unlike what Freud promotes, the main problem was relationship skills. And so I realized that there was no such class in schools. And I tried, you know, when I started teaching, even before I started teaching, I tried to do as after school program for mothers and so on. Then in school, I tried to offer that extracurricular. Eventually, after I became a principal, I made a class which would be 1 period per week in every single grade. Before I reached there, actually, so this is a long story, but I tried to teach a class which is marriage preparation. Okay, because I was thinking, if you teach them while they're still in school, they don't even know who they're going to marry, they don't hate that person yet, how to have conversation or a good relationship with your spouse, that's the answer to the problem. That's what I thought. Well, the funny thing is that when I did that course, at least I tried, it was terrible because most of the kids could not get along with their siblings or their friends, let alone a future spouse. So that's when I realized, okay, let's go back to middle school. So I teach them about friendship, right? Then I went back and I found they don't even know who they themselves are. They don't even know if they are a Muslim or an American, or this or that. You know, they don't even understand themselves. So I went back until I reached pre-K. And I can't reach before pre-K because they're at home with their parents, okay? But the activity has to be sequenced. You start with yourself. So I couldn't teach that marriage preparation until I was able to teach everything else that led to that. Okay. Active form of learning. The learning has to be active. Don't sit there and listen, blah, 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 blah. No, everything you do has to be make them find out the information themselves. you can give them the information, obviously, but whatever else they do has to be actively learning it. So they integrate it inside them. Because look, this is about relationship skills. And you don't learn that by sitting and listening, okay? Explicit about targeting specifics, like we said. Okay, for example, Salah. Do you all do your Salah on time? Okay, and this is, you can ask them, you can ask the students, just like, I'm not going to report to anyone, just let's discuss this in general. Or you can make it, everybody can answer anonymously, right? How many of you are able to pray on time every single Salah, right? Why? And then, instead of blaming them for it, you can say, well, remember we talked about self-management? This is self-management. You're in the middle of a computer game against so many other people, and then I don't want to stop the game for Salah. I can do it a bit, but like Maghrib nowadays is very, very short, right? So sometimes, like, are you able to control that urge to play? Put it down and go and pray. Are you able to control that? That's a test of your control. And maybe that could be one thing, like every week, how many times were you able to, okay, so I know I'm almost done, so let me hurry up. So why whole school? Because the student has to be able to do this throughout the day, not just, okay, I do this in Islamic studies, but when I go to math, never mind, it doesn't matter. No, so it has to be a whole school thing. You can read about what is a good school culture, school climate, and I've witnessed this, that once your students start changing, they bring it home. And all of a sudden, their parents start changing, their family starts changing, and the whole community starts changing. So you can see how important is this job you're doing, especially as an Islamic studies teacher. Finally, final slide, don't embed the teaching into language arts, social studies, or any other. And you are going to say, yeah, but you just told me to embed it in social Islamic studies. No. I'm saying embedding, meaning that, all right, they can teach it in language arts and the rest of the school doesn't care about it. That's what I meant. So don't embed it in just one class. It has to be a whole school effort. And the other thing is the last one. No staff training or limited staff training leads to a failure. Okay, you have to train the staff. All right, any questions? Based on, okay, let me check this out.
MashaAllah, Sister Fawzia, that was amazing. That you went through that information. It was a lot, but it was very clear and easy to use. You know, you gave very direct, practical pointers on how to implement this. MashaAllah. Are there any questions? We would love to have some interactive discussion here. I'm sure you have questions for Sister Fawzia.
Ms. Leila, there are none at this time in the chat, so if anyone wants to raise their hand and ask, they have that option.
Okay. So if raise your hand and we will have the moderators unmute you and you can ask your question. So is it my understanding that this really needs to be an administrative push, like the leadership in the school has to buy into this and has to implement it school-wide, and then Islamic studies teachers can really implement it. But what happens if you don't have a school leadership that's going to do it school-wide? Can teachers in their classes still do something?
Yes, that's a very, very good point. If the whole school does not have already a program or is not planning to put in place a program for SEL, at least do it in your classroom. It's a bit like saying in your family, your older sister tells you you shouldn't lie, but your mother and father don't care, right? How effective is that going to be? At least there is some effect, but it's not as good as if the father, the mother, the older sister, everybody is on the same page. We're not going to lie. We're not going to cheat. We're going to do this together, you know? So one question says, the last point I mentioned. What last point? No teacher training? Is that the one? So the last point, if I go back to
Is Raida Saleh, you can if you can clarify what point you're referring to.
Ineffective approach, is that the one? So I did mention about limited staff training. So we went through the whole EQ thing that the staff needs to be EQ trained. So first of all, every teacher needs to take an EQ test. You can take it by yourself just to find out whether you're high or low EQ. And I don't think, and don't lie, because nobody's going to look at the result except yourself, right? So don't lie, just answer truthfully. And actually, we can tell you, if you know that you shout in the classroom a lot, you already know you have some problem. Okay. Do you pick on certain students? Like, remember one of the student complaints was she doesn't like me, or she only likes so-and-so, right? So we have all heard of teachers' pets. Unfortunately, it still happens. And I have actively parents complaining to me about that. Okay. So if that happens, then the teacher needs to address that issue. You are here to teach students, not one student. Okay. You can, if you only want to teach one student, you can tutor them. Why are you here in the school? You need to teach everyone. And if most of them are not getting it, why? That's what you need to figure out. Maybe they need a different approach. Maybe don't have prior knowledge. Maybe. So you shouldn't just blame it on them. Who are you? Why you didn't study? So what you're doing is, I'm right and nobody else is right. I have a student right now who's struggling with calculus and says her teacher does something that none of the other teachers in that high school does. And they are way ahead. They're already into integration. Everybody's still in differentiation, right? And And I'm going to say, okay, did the teacher explain you how to? No, she just showed us this, and then she gave us all of this to do. And then she's going to grade you on it. Right? So if you don't happen to have a tutor, or you don't happen to have a parent or an older sibling, or somebody can help you with it, you don't know how to solve that. And then if you're not able to solve it, they'll blame it on you. You didn't work hard enough. So shouldn't the teacher figure out there's something? But the problem is not just her method of teaching, but her attitude, which is, I'm right and you're wrong. Okay. If you don't know how to do it, too bad. Why didn't you check the homework? Why didn't you do this? Why? It's all you. It's not me. Okay. So, and as you saw, complaints from students are always about the teacher's EQ. I have yet to hear one student say, she's teaching math, but she doesn't know math. Nobody. Or she's teaching history, but she doesn't know history, which, by the way, I've seen the usual social studies is being assigned to anybody else who has spare time. Okay. And most social studies teachers don't actually, I actually don't know much about history or geography or whatever. They don't know enough about it. Yet nobody complains. Nobody complains about that. They only complain about emotional quotient issues.
Fawzia, I think you made a suggestion, which is actually not just for EQ, but for anything when teaching, is to record yourself. There's no way for us to assess what we sound like, what we look like, what our habits are in the classroom, unless we see it for ourselves. And nobody has to know. You set your phone up somewhere in the room and record a class. And there's so much to learn from that. I don't know, Brother Fouad, are there any other questions in the chat or any hands up?
I don't see either at this time.
All right, then thank you very much for attending, and salam alaikum.
That was wonderful, Fawzia. Jazakallah khair for your expertise. It was very informative and very helpful. And thank you for joining us on this Sunday morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. We will see you at the next session in about 10 minutes. You may log out and log back in. So Jazakumullah khair. And Brother Fouad, would you mind closing us out with Surah Al-Asr?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyaka نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
Thank you.
Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum salam.
And this will be posted on the ISNA website, so you can see the recordings on the ISNA website or YouTube channel. Jazakumullah khair.